going to read Psalms chapter 7. Many of you understand that that's about the tribe of Benjamin, one of the 12 tribes of Israel as it's recorded in the Bible. And Benjamin is quoted as a Cushite, and a Cushite is an Ethiopian. An Ethiopian is an African, whereas an African is a black man. And you can see right here this actor whose name is Andre Benjamin. Of course, the word or the name Benjamin being paired with Andre. Andre is highly relative to another word, that comes after it. That would be giant. Andre the Giant. And in all reality, that's the real motivation in the choosing for this actor to be in this position here. So he plays a character that has many names. One of them is Clarence Withers. In other words, something that is withering is dying, going away. So we've got a very sinister plot that secret societies, mystery Babylon, satanic organizations in their own right, connected to the Freemasons, being controlled by what is the Illuminati, but so many people don't seem to understand what the Illuminati is, and I can understand why people don't know. They don't understand. Well, the Illuminati represents the moon. It represents illuminated is the description for the Babylonian moon god Sin, and then Sin translates to illuminated or illumination. And then you have the capital of Babylon is Shinar. Shinar means shining or illuminated. And then the derivative of Sinai, in which the Israelites were basically in a way birthed out of, right there. It's called the Wilderness of Sin, right there in the Sinai Peninsula. And it's even an inverted triangle, which is a symbolism for the sacred feminine, symbolism for the womb. Basically, Israel was born out of that. The captive Hebrews, those that followed Moses through the wilderness and then camped about the base of Sinai. And then, of course, that we're responsible for at least the story with the connection with the golden calf. And then the melting, the refination, the trying it in the fire. And, of course, they were all directed to eat that gold. And that's relative to what we're talking about here. But Sinai, root derivative of sin, and that means shining. And all this is relative now to the moon. And that's where it's really, in essence, all bottlenecking to, as we have really discovered on this channel. So it's a sinister plot afoot. And it has a lot to do with this organization digging pits, not just for Africans, but their other kinsmen and other peoples, other nations, other religions, all sorts of people. And then we've already cited some things from the Egyptian Book of Caverns, connected with the Egyptian Book of Dead, where we see that Horus is responsible. He's symbolizing Horus. Horus has a darkened right eye, as you can see. There's his lower down right eye, symbolizing upper and lower Egypt, the red and the white. So Horus is supposed to be enacting this vengeance and retaliation against what happened to Osiris Orion, his father. And that Osiris was torn apart in 14 pieces, if I remember correctly, by Seth. And Seth is the god of darkness and chaos. But all of this is a bunch of circles and hoops and fire rings they're making everybody jump through. Um, it all comes down to what they're trying to tell you they want to do. They want to unify good and evil together. And then that would be what? That'd be Seth and Horus. And then you know the ancient depictions of Seth and Horus that are turning the fire drill together. The drill is a symbolism for opposition. So those would be polar opposites. In other words, equatively of good and evil. In other words, working together for the benefit of all, turning the fire drill, which is equated now with this destruction of fire that culminates at the end of these cyclic stages of world ages, which is connected to the consummation of their crimes coming to the full, which is right out of the Bible. And it's from Genesis chapter 4, verse 24. It describes the vengeance of Cain will be enacted after a 70 times sevenfold period of time. But there was an equational number that was missing from that, and it was 72. It was 70 times 72, then times 7, and then we arrived at the number 36,288 BC, and that was a blend of the Hebrew and then the Mayan world age numbers as well. That's how we arrived at that number. And then we discovered that the Hebrews had a world age that was synonymous with the Mayan world age, and both of their philosophies centered upon serpent destruction at the beginning and the ending of these ages. And along with this destruction, of course, the people were destroyed, as it's being called in modern times, culled. And that means thinning the population when you deal with livestock or animals. But let it be also known, it's done when you deal with feral animals. And we know that feral represents a feral species, and that you have to cull repeatedly a feral species. So what goes around comes around, and it's just so sad that these people don't understand that. They don't understand it. But that's what we do our best to try to get them to see before it's too late. You know, and they would likely have you believe that it was too late for me, but no, I'm gonna be all right. Be all right. I got love in my heart for everyone. That's gonna make me all right. So we're dealing with a very sinister plot about multi-layered deceptions aimed at all sorts of people, not just the Africans. But at this point, since we've been talking about Benjamin and we've been seeing so much, it seems to be almost the primary manifest now, because it does something for all the fair-skinned people that are involved in this. It gives them hope and faith that, oh, this bad stuff that our organization is supposed to do with this switcheroo thing, oh, it's really to all these guys. It's not going to happen to us. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I don't think you understand. You need to read into these things a little deeper than you already are and understand the organization that you're within is not to be trusted. It's not to be trusted. Some bad stuff afoot, and Jesus is the only one that can bring you out of it and can bring you truly safe and sound with no affiliation with the sons of Sam in doing it. No, truly safe and truly completely all right, meaning sound. You're still okay. You're still you still have integrity. You're still fine, you know, safe and sound. But we know that the safe and sound that's connected to the sons of Sam, the safe represents the lock, and then the sound represents the frequency or the vibration, which in essence is connected with the rising, and in the rising of this vibration, which is to what? Create a distortion. Distortion does what to a vessel? It breaks it. So if you were to take a glass, put water in it, the water represents, in essence, the spirit identity, and then the vessel represents the physical. If you raise the vibration high enough, everybody's run their finger that was wetted around the rim of a glass, and you raise the vibration, it begins to make a screeching, shrill noise. In some cases, it can bust the vessel. Well, that's what they're trying to do. The vessel is the seal, and then in so many ways, the seal is the energy manifestation that is containing reality, all things within, from micro to macro. just to give you an example, think about an atom, how it's drawn. Okay, that's how you've really seen an atom that's been drawn in school. You know, that's how it's symbolized. But in all actuality, what you're seeing is the geometry for this. The star tetrahedron. It's the same geometry. Now, that's the seal, and as I said, the seal, in essence, is equating the physical vessel. Okay? But the physical vessel is holding something. What it's holding is the spirit identity. The spirit identity that's non-personalized is in possession of the infinite spirit, which is known as the Holy Ghost or the infinite mother spirit, depending on what school of thought you're under. But as you know, it represents the Father, the Son, and the infinite spirit. Some people would call the Holy Ghost. That represents the femininity of the fatherhood of God. You know, that harmony between the feminine agenda, the feminine responsibility, the feminine objective, and then in liaison, cooperation with the masculine perception of those, and then actualization of those. And then, of course, all of those come forthwith in the Son, manifest, the representation of the Father, the perfect Father in heaven, which is in cooperation with the infinite Spirit and the eternal Son. Okay, that's the Trinity. It's the Trinity aspect in which we see the three are one. But in all things that are created, you'll see from micro to macro, the original creation, the original manifestation of these energies will always follow this contour, if you will, this outline in the 2D material density of matter. You'll see this equational symbol show up. Now, that would be circumscribed tetrahedral geometry. And then circumscribed tetrahedral geometry is basically saying this is a tetrahedron. And what we would do, we would inscribe the tetrahedron in a sphere, and we would put it to relative size to where the tetrahedron's outer points would touch equally along the interior of the sphere, and that's called circumscribed tetrahedral geometry. But there's something that you have to do. You have to align the north and the south points of the tetrahedron to the tilt and the axis of the globe in question. In this case, it would be the Earth. So when we do, we find out that we are tilted on a 23.5 degree tilt in our axis, which is relative to the Earth being knocked in the past, which is relative to the Anunnaki knocking up the daughters of men, and which is connected to the 23 enigma. In other words, the sacred feminine, which is 2/3 more genetic hereditary traits being offered to the offspring than the male. And what is the most dominant trait being offered? That would be hair. You get your hair from your mama's side. And then this is why Samson, or the sons of Sam, Samson had his strength in his hair, but it really wasn't his hair. In all actuality, the hair was a symbolism for the genetics of the sacred feminine, which was then leading back to the ancient bull gods, aka the fallen sons of God, the Anunnaki, who knocked up the daughters of men in Genesis 6. Now this is relative to Genesis 6 because this represents 6 points. In other words, the 6th seal. But this is in the 2D manifest. If you 3D manifest this, we find out that it has 8 points. But these 2 points, the northern and the southern polarities, are nullified because they become singular. So in all actuality, we're dealing with, in essence, a 7 perspective geometry that has, in essence, a divergency when it's entertaining a bipolarity. And then in its 2D, it represents the 6th seal, which then represents the 6th senses, which would then represent the better unification of the material and the spiritual perception, which would then be somebody that is using efficiently both portions of the hemisphere of their brain, and in essence is experiencing a spiritual quickening. Now, of course, many people believe you got to do all this kind of stuff to make it happen. Kundalini breathing exercises, taking all sorts of psychedelics, performing ritual, incantation, or ceremony, chanting monotonous words over and over again, favorable days, favorable robes, favorable signs, favorable stars, favorable doctrines, favorable colors, you name it. They've got all sorts of ways that you're supposed to receive this spiritual power from on high, but there's only a real way to make it happen, and that's to have faith. That's power. Faith is power. But power is just not dealt out to anybody. It's always given to you with your individual capacity to receive. And the Father exactly knows that you don't give, in essence, a spiritual child the mature knowledge of a spiritual adult, because that knowledge, in essence, is earned through experiential gain, through multi-level existences that are not reincarnations but are yet incarnations of the original self, from one world to the next. Not, in essence, reincarnation from a person into a creature into something based upon karma. No. The karma aspect is just relative to judgment, because you're not judged for what you've done wrong, you're judged for what you've done right. That's the real nature of the truth of judgment. And it is in connection to a certain portion of the perspective of the truth of karma. But many people have gotten it backwards. You're not judged for what you've done wrong, you're judged for what you've done right. Literally. Because remember, Jesus Christ says, all of your sins will be forgotten. All of your sins will be blotted away. You know, all of your transgressions will not be remembered. You know, your tears will be wiped away. Okay? So you're judged for what you've done right. Everything you've done wrong is non-existential. It has no outlying repercussion beyond our own level of world that's been quarantined. We cannot ripple out any further this chaos wave than the extension of the solar system in which they have quarantined us in. We're in a quarantine portion of a solar system, as many other planets are that have rebelled in the ancient past along with ours. I think it was either 38 or 39 others, I can't remember correctly. And you would see that they would call that the Galactic Federation of Light, blah, blah, blah. But if they're quarantined as we are, that means that the connection that they have to each other at best is through channeling. And we know that even in the Urantia it says that if these people, if mankind really want to have clear association with the fallen prince, then they can. They can. And of course, he requires certain things that must be done, and which would be, in essence, to understand how to approach him. And then this will be where the ritual, the ceremony, and the incantation comes from, or at least the desire, the need for it. But you know, Jesus requires none of that. He dwells within you freely. Freely. Already. Already. If you have faith. And if you have just a mustard seed worth of faith in him, guess what? He's there. But you're not going to receive the spiritual enlightenment that you've been led to believe you are, just simply because you have the spirit of truth residing within you. You know what I mean? You have to, in essence, walk that talk. You know, and what that talk was brotherhood. What's the gospel? Does anybody know what the gospel is? I mean, really, what is the gospel? What is the gospel's most basic foundation? Brotherhood of all mankind under the universal fatherhood of God. That is what the gospel is. That is what Jesus Christ taught. That is what his disciples were supposed to teach. And of course, we know that many of them deterred, so to say, from that. So many people would strain the gnat for the camel because of it. all mankind, all, under the universal fatherhood of God. One shepherd, many sheep, many flocks of different orders, different classes, religions, nations, tones, colors, perspectives, and doctrines, all one God, only separated by ignorance and confusion and deception and distortion and lies, all that are supposedly masquerading themselves as some sort of spiritual truth, which is really nothing more than a cunning sophistry of the devil. Jesus is the spiritual truth. He's the only one that lived it. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people write about it. A lot of people yell, argue, scream, and say people are going to die about it. But only one was able to live it. And the world has never been able to forget it. That's what power is. That's what the truth is. Jesus is that truth. And he's going to do his best to reveal through me a little more to you if you're able to receive. So we're going to be talking about the tribe of Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin is very unique in the Bible. We have three distinctions for the darker skinned man in the Bible: Nubia, Cush, and Ham. Benjamin is considered a Cushite, as we're going to see right here in Psalm 7. Cush, Benjamite. Now, Cush, to the best of my understanding, is Ethiopia, which is further even interrelated as Nubia, and the Nubia represents the African populace in general, which, as we see, Benjamite, by the secret society's perspective, has been chose to represent this Nubia African populace, more or less like a generic code for it, if you will. So Andre Benjamin right here is on the darkened right eye side. We know that that's the trauma side. That's the blood red side. We know that this blood red is connected with sacrifice. It's connected with sacrifice that are being justified by genetic skewed doctrines that are relative to the Old Testament connection with Yahweh's proclamation of the destruction of Gentiles and the destruction of any other type of people other than Israel. And we know that Israel is the representation of El. And then El represents the ancient bull gods. The ancient bull gods were the Anunnaki. These Anunnaki were Caucasoid. They were Aryan. And this is where we get Satan, prince of the powers of the air. And this is where we get Aryan, in other words, some Aryans, Sumerians from. And this would be what these guys were trying to imply to these guys who see a Nubian occupation in Egypt. These guys are saying, well, you don't understand. All those gods that you see wearing the mask, they're all Aryans. Horus, Anubis, all of them. All of them, as it goes right on down through the gauntlet. When you see them wearing these masks, Thoth, etc., those are the ancient gods. The ancient gods, in what you read from the Bible, are these fair-skinned Nordic-like beings. And then this is what they're trying to say we're trying to smack you all down on. But what these guys don't realize, or what they're really trying to cover up, and they have realized it, is that those gods, those Aryan gods, are fallen, and they never were gods. They were just of an order of a faction known as the sons of God, who were sent here to do a very specific work, and that was to usher in spiritual civilization, not materialization of a already begun spiritualization of the populace. And then, as we can see in our ancient past, there was a level of spirituality that was reached that then almost in a sense regurgitates itself into some sort of amnesia of itself, and then goes into this utter darkness in which we have in essence floundered in chaos ever since. You know, but this is when the original sons of God, Job chapter 38 lines 1 through 7, were in liaison in truth with the morning stars. The morning stars is not the physical morning star that you see as Venus. That's the symbolism of, as it's been applied within the ripple of the manifest of the physical construct that's reflective of the destruction chaos ripple, not the creative creation ripple, if you get my drift. You know? The creative creation ripple, not the destructive ripple. So many people are riding these waves of chaos as these two mountains, Jashin and Boaz, while they think we're all of us are languishing down here in the valley of indecision, the valley of the shadow of death. The valley of the shadow of death is actually created by the misperception of the two mountains of haughty pride, Jashin and Boaz. Think about it. Think about it. So we're going to be talking about a Benjamite. Benjamites or Cushites, considered Africans as being applied to this day. And then Benjamin or Benjamites in general are considered lefties. As you see, he's on the right, but once you get the switcheroo, Andre Benjamin's once again on the left. Andre, as I said, the choice for giant is going to connect us back to the Olmecs, which is going to connect us back to servitude, which will connect us back to gold mining, which I told you is what makes the symbols relative. You got to know in which symbol's being applied and what relative context in which it comes. If it's being applied as yellow to the African, at least from these guys' perception, it represents multiple things that are all not good. The gold for him in yellow is going to represent you're a slave. You were the one created to dig it out for us to make us rich. Or it's going to represent the corn, which represents these guys that were sowing the crops, working the fields, as these guys made these guys sow the crops and work the fields in even the early history of America. As above, so too below. So the relative symbology as the secret society has been applying to the African through the context of the Benjamite has been relative to the things that we're going to see here in Psalm 7 as it's expressed further in Matthew chapter 7. In other words, Jesus really knows what he's talking about, and he's trying to get me to understand as best as I can to get you guys to see that he knows what he's talking about. So this is going to be about Benjamin. Andre's Benjamin's number was number 7 in the movie. And we're going to see it Psalm 7, and it's talking about Benjamin the Cushite. All right? Now, once we read Matthew 7 after this, it should make a whole lot of sense. There'll be no way to deny this parallel. And it's about, we're going to have an audio outage coming up here right after the 30-minute marker. So maybe I won't start reading until after that. I want you to see how the switcheroo is taking place. They're showing it to you here on this side of the DVD. Notice this guy in the blue is like swooshing over to the left real quick. See that? He's in motion. Notice the ice kicking up off his skates. He's dashing over here to the left, and then the red is dashing over here to the right. That's the switcheroo. Okay? And as I said, it's being run on this side as well. But the switcheroo is being run in deception. And you're actually seeing the switcheroos being run in deception here. And I just haven't talked to you guys about how they manifest it within this code here. Between these two types of caricatures of racial stereotypes based upon status, based upon societal status or societal stance, if you will. We got the hardcore rock and roller, tough guy symbolized here with the fire, fire, fire. And then we got the rich kid, but yet it's the orphan who's got the misidentified past that's connected to the blue, connected to the ice. And as you can see, there's the blonde. And that's going to connect us back to the Nordics. It's going to connect us back to the Aryans with that misidentified past, and then connected with this adopted father, which now is going to be connected with the fur, which will then be connected back in connection with Esau as it's relative to Jacob, because Jacob and Esau in essence are a synthesis, at least comparative in the structure that it's related within the Hebrew Bible. And then you know Esau was the red hairy one, and then we see this fur of flying, this connection with the hair and the sons of Sam. Sons of Sam, Samson had his strength from his hair. But the hair is really relative, as I said, for the sacred feminine. Once you get 2/3 more of the genetic hereditary traits from your mother's side than you do your father's side. So your mother gives you your hair, and this is where the real strength is of the Samsons. It's not the hair itself, it's the sacred feminine genetics from Genesis 6. In other words, the admixture from the Anunnaki that were considered the bull gods. And this is where I said Israel. You know, Israel, being led by Ephraim, the lost 10 tribes. Benjamin is excluded. Judah is excluded. idols, which were those ancient Anunnakis, which were these ancient Aryan gods. That was a lot to say. So let me go ahead and try to read Psalm 7 here. And when I read Matthew 7, the two together are going to let you know that Jesus is talking about everything I'm talking about, as I've been doing my best to talk about it in connection with this moon symbolism here. So we're going to read Psalm 7, a Shagigion of David. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. Which he sang unto the Lord concerning the words of Cush the Benjamite. O Lord my God, in thee do I put my trust. Save me from all them that persecute me, and deliver me. Lest he tear my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces, while there is none to deliver. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there be iniquity in my hands, if I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me, yea, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. Anybody see that symbol right there? This is in the Schofield Study Bible. I didn't do that. This is the Schofield Study Bible. This is my Bible right here. That's my name. Kurt Richards. And if you go to Psalm 7 in the Schofield Study Bible, you will see that this just so happens to turn out through the punctuation as a smiley face. And how many people have noticed that on my hand and wanted to condemn me for it, that it was even on my left hand? Remember that, Bill? Remember Benjamite connected with the left hand? Remember Judah, Benjamin's keeper, Bill? That's right. See how the Spirit works? And then notice, Bill and others, that it's on verse 4. 4/7/72. That's my birthday. I'm the fourth brother of 3 sisters. Right? It's on verse 4. Think about it, guys. If I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me. Okay? O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there be iniquity in my hands, if I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me, yea, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. Somebody has delivered these people that think that this person that's actually trying to deliver them has done them all this wrong. And he says, yea. In other words, no, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. In other words, these people have made them the enemy of these other people without cause. It's all based upon doctrine is what is making enemies of people, not actual real personal experience of living spirit qualification of one mutual respect of another person for another person, regardless of what some doctrine or some BS in a book told you. Come on, get a grip. Get a grip. If I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me, yea, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. Let the enemy persecute my soul and take it. Yea, let him tread down my life upon the earth, and lay mine honor in the dust. Selah. Arise, O Lord, in thine anger. Lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies, and awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. So shall the congregation of the people compass thee about. For their sakes, therefore, return thou on high. The Lord shall judge the people. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness and according to mine integrity that is in me. O let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just, for the righteous God trieth the hearts and reins. The hearts and reins of men. My defense is of God, which saveth the upright in heart. God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. Notice what verse that's on. If he turn not He will whet his sword. He hath bent his bow and made it ready. He hath also prepared for him the instruments of death. He ordaineth his arrows against the persecutors. Behold, he travaileth with iniquity, and hath conceived mischief, and brought forth falsehood. He made a pit, and digged it, and is fallen into the ditch which he made. His mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High. Serious business there. Now, most of you guys are prone to swallowing a camel and then straining the gnat. And you can't see that this isn't God writing these words. These are men that were inspired, in some cases by other men that were even further inspired by God. But when you see these connections with anger being applied to the Lord in the representation of the Father that's backing up Benjamin here, you got to realize that the Father is very unhappy with this. And he says that until the consummation of their crimes comes to the full, no railing accusation. An accusation is words. And then we know that Jesus Christ will smite them with his words. And for the wicked, there is no contest. I mean, they're on the losing team outright, but they just think that nothing's going to happen to them because nothing's happened to them so far. But then remember, they forget, no railing accusation until the consummation of their crimes comes to the full. Consummation of the crimes come to the full is this inky going into physical form. And then, of course, the appropriate connections with the ritual sacrifices that go with it. And then the stages of events that unfold with the procedures of what they would call the culling of this earth, which is the destruction of the populace of this world based upon their skewed vision of it. Okay, so these things are going to begin to start fulfilling, but then Jesus says he cuts it short. He said if he didn't cut it short, that no flesh would survive. So in other words, he cuts them short. So they start it, but in other words, we finish it. We finish it. So if you're going to strain the gnat, which is this context of men applying anger as they feel it, but then applying it to God, and then applying all these other things in perspective of this vengeance as they feel it, and then to God, then you're basically missing the point here. The point is that the Father is going to set the captives free, and that he is going to uphold his children in this world, and that their ultimate agenda will not fulfill. And it will not fulfill in perspective of the Benjamites. They will not fulfill this and do this to them. And it's not going to happen. And that's the way that I see it. It's the way the Spirit has led me to see it. It's the way that my understanding understands it. So there's all sorts of important things in here, and you got to really know how to read that. And to help you, Matthew 7 will help you do it. So verse 4, if you guys are a part of the club that watches me and that's trying to figure me out and all that stuff, ponder that. 4772, that's my birthday. 7, April 7th, Benjamin, number 7, Psalm 7, 4, there's a smiley face. Did I write this Bible? Huh? Did I write this Bible, guys? Huh? Or does my Father run the entire show? The entire show that only some of you are just temporary actors in. And you think you're playing games, and you ain't understanding that what you think is this game has already been won, and it was won on the cross a long time ago. And most of you people that are obsessed with this philosophical nature of time and Saturn and Satan all connected together, you're truly running out of it. You're truly running out of it. And I think you know this. Let the enemy persecute my soul and take it. Yea, let him tread down my life upon the earth and lay my honor in the dust. So when you see here, arise, O Lord, in thine anger, lift up thyself because of the rage. It's interesting because it's at line 6. I'm sure that people want to see a flip-flop here, because you can see a flip-flop of identities. Because this is David supposedly talking about Benjamin, or the words of Benjamin. But you can see that you can choose the way that you. So in other words, what I'm trying to say to you here is verse 6, to them being seen as their God and representation of Satan, who is now going to enact this punishment on Benjamin? Or is it more appropriate in understanding that it's a skewed vision of the perfection of the Father through the Son in his return, of the shortening of this tribulation in which anger is being applied to him? And I would say that it's the later. But they have skewed in their vision, and then they would see that it's the enactment of their deity, which is now rising in this anger and rage against Benjamin. Could it not be seen that way? Right, it could be, because if you paired this with the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it's interesting, there's 2 sevens right there. And then, of course, April 7th, that's my birthday, on the 4th, right? 4th month. And then Benjamin, 7, Psalm 7, number 7 right here. Right, did y'all guys catch that nose on Andre Benjamin's, or that mole on Andre Benjamin's nose that I got on the other side of my nose? Anybody catch that? Huh? Do you know what's happening here? Do you know what 11:11 is? Do you know what has happened when the Father has sent somebody unto the house, the house of the lost sheep of Israel, and that Israel is being led by Leven, which is the 11 mirror, which is Ephraim, which is mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest on the wall? Who's the fairest of them all? The dude that looks like a lady, who ain't really worried about none of you. He's only worried about his own reflection, his own image. I've had to go into this house of mirrors here. Everything about me has mirrored your perceptual objectivity. You don't know what's going on, do you? High agents that's cut me off from everybody else. You don't know what's going on, do you? You might be wanting to kind of disappear in your seat right now. You might be having a lump in your throat. You might be shaking your head thinking that you're listening to a dead man. You might be laughing me off. Well, I implore you to follow your equational course as you see fit. And then when you just get to the point of the end of the line, think about me and what I said. And then you'll still have a chance. Because what I've said is the truth of Jesus Christ, and that he loves you, and that he cares for you, and that he has prepared infinite mercies for you, and is at every second and every moment ready to blot out your sins. Doesn't mean you can't commit more sins, but he is ever ready to forget your sins and move on into the truth of the righteousness of what you can become. If you just put away all this BS doctrine of power and rule and lust and inheritance of material things, and stop trying to equate the kingdom of God into some supper of material meat and plenty, when it's not. It's not. It's not about the sacrifice of your brothers. It's about the sacrifice of your animalistic, bastardized natures. That's what you're to throw on the eternal spirit fires of rejuvenation, and to release this energy into a higher, more positive transmutation of a better version of truth, in which you can put to work living in your life today that's going to truly help others, not digging pits for your brothers. Think about it. So you can see where flip-flop could be seen in here by these people that want to entertain such things. So arise, O Lord, in thine anger, lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies, and awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. Now Israel, in other words, has taken upon itself to judge its own people, but what you've got to realize is that Dan is the 13th judge of Israel. Now remember, Ephraim is the 11th. 11 is the mirror. Who's Ephraim trying to mirror? He's trying to mirror Dan. He's trying to mirror Dan as himself. Because remember, it's mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? What do they choose? All the daughters of men have thought they were fair. That makes them the Samsons. The Samsons got the hair power. The hair power is related to the sacred feminine. Sacred feminine is the 23 enigma. So in other words, Ephraim is priding himself as the existence of the descendancy of Dan, who's supposed to judge Israel, when he don't realize that who Dan is judging is Israel, who is Ephraim. Ephraim is Israel. Read Genesis chapter 48. Read Genesis chapter 48. Ephraim is Israel, given the name Israel by Jacob. What named Dan? So Ephraim's trying to mirror Dan. Ephraim's trying to pretend to be a lion, when he don't really realize that Dan is a lion's whelp. What you missing, Ephraim? Dan ain't a lion. At least not in Deuteronomy chapter 33 he ain't. He's a lion's whelp. He's a lion's whelp. Is that not verse 22? I'm not sure about that. 2 + 2 is 4 if it is. He's a lion's whelp. Dan is a lion's whelp. Dan is going to judge Israel. Dan represents DNA. Dan represents, in essence, in this essence, the fulfillment of the spiritual prophecy, not their material bastardization of it. So Dan as a lion's whelp is going to link right on back in a connection with the Midwayers. Big time. 1111. 1,111 loyal midway creatures. Midway between spirit, midway between material. Dan is a lion's whelp. What does that mean? Something, in essence, with the birthing from these ancient mighty men. If you understand about the Midwayers and the connection to it, there's something very unique there that pertains to the whelping, the whelp of these lions. See, Ephraim isn't really on ball and really on point. They would like you all to believe that they were by straining many gnats, but at the same time gobbling down camels left and right, stuffing them down their throat to where they're literally sticking out on either side, to where they even look like a camel themselves. Came El. You know, where did El came? Well, El came in Inanna. The Inunu, or the Inanu, the Inu bird, the Bin. All this represents sexual symbolisms of phalluses, wombs, and semen. And you know that Enki is the lord of the abyss, or the Apsu, which is connected to sea, which is connected to chaos and unruly people. And then semen is come. And then came El, Cam El, El came. El came into the sacred feminine to overthrow this world. But with the truth of Jesus Christ, only thing he's done is overthrown many idiots that in essence are on the path to lose their soul. And I call you, if you're a part of this organization, an idiot simply at this time, because if you have heard me speak for any length of time and you're still involved in what you're in, you're blind. You're blind. And if you're still listening to me, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. What are you doing? You're in the valley of indecision now. Why do you halt between two decisions? I can't be working for the devil if I'm revealing so much truth. I mean, I'm saying Jesus Christ the whole way. And then you guys are thinking it's something else. How could it be anything else? Look what I've been able to accomplish through the Spirit. Their whole entire network watches what I do and say, what I eat, where I go, what I look at, and what I know is their obsession. And it's all because of Jesus and because of me. So shall the congregation of the people compass thee about. For their sakes therefore return thou on high. The Lord shall judge the people. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, according to my integrity that is in me. O let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just, for the righteous God trieth the hearts and the reins. The defenses of God, which saveth the upright in heart. God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. As I said, that key connection with verse 11. And then the verse 11 is going to connect back with Ephraim in the way that they're trying to mirror it. If he turn not, he will whet his sword. He hath bent his bow and made it ready. See, this is all connecting back to Orion the Great Hunter. And this is where they're trying to justify this. They're trying to justify this as Orion coming against the Benjamites. And I'm not kidding around, because at verse 13, you know, Revelation chapter 13, verse 13 is that fire from the sky. That's connected to Revelation chapter 8, verse 8. That's also connected to Revelation chapter 12, and it's also connected to Zechariah chapters 4 and 5. And then we know that 4 and 5 are connected with this flying roll and this curse that goes about the earth, and then somebody's lifted up in this Ephraim basket with this wickedness cast in. All that on verse 13 right here. He hath also prepared him the instruments of death. He ordaineth his arrows against the persecutors. Now this is where I'm trying to tell you, you get the mirror here. You get the mirror here, because the Father has arrows too. And this is the real source of the prophecy. And as you see, they're trying to materialize the prophecy and then fulfill it. And then they fulfill the action of the material arrows and they make it happen. But what the ancient situation was from these destructions that these guys are enacting with all this Nibiru hoopla, which is really just a masking of these mythologies of these planetary deities, that they put these masks of this astrotheology on top of these ancient gods, and then have hidden so many identities and the connections and the introversions between them with the planets. Okay? But what I'm trying to tell you is that the real source for the ancient destructions were natural calamities that had real celestial precedents. But then later we see the calamities to justify the act were being made to look like it was a natural event. But the action was really what is being referred to in modern times as this culling, which is the thinning of the population. Read the book of Leviticus, and you'll see the code of sevens that comes into play. And then we're talking about who? Benjamite number 7. And then let's not forget me, April 7th, born on April 7th. Everything going on with me that the Spirit has put me through is a complete reflection and connection with this identity. But remember, Judah is Benjamin's keeper. Well, Jesus Christ is the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. Who did I say my master was? Right. Do you see how it all manifests? Can your people do that? You got any guy out there on YouTube that's doing anything close like what I've done? Nope, there ain't nobody on earth that's doing what I'm doing. The Spirit is working exclusively through me to get you guys to see you're being given chance after chance after chance. Don't judge your own understanding of God through the imperfection that I have. Don't do that. Don't do that. And when I mean imperfection, I'm just meaning me as a simple man. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not making mistakes standing up for Benjamin. I'm not making mistakes laying up my life and giving it up for what I know is right. I'm not making a mistake for calling Jesus Christ my Lord, Master, Savior, Redeemer, my all, my everything, my anything. I'm not making a mistake for that. But I have made mistakes of my own emotions, and I've made mistakes of my own actions, and I'll probably continue to make those same mistakes for many a day as I grow and I learn and I'm allowed and I'm given that grace by God, that free will to experience and to grow and to go with it and to learn from it and to then get what I get out of it. I've earned from it and it's mine. You know? That's how it works. The Father don't hit the balls for you. He don't make the big plays. But He does instruct you and train you on how to make it come through yourself. So you can see where they've become confused here with this scripture here in Psalm 7. And what I'm going to really tell you here is that the real inspiration for these words is coming from Cush itself, the spirit of Cush, the spirit of the sufferer, the spirit of the servitude of the slave that has been used as a slave race from ancient times, being connected to the skewed genetic doctrine of the Olmecs, which genetically do not connect to the entire African populace. It's a very infinitesimal, if even considered existent, amount of genetic material relative to the Olmecs within the populace today, the main populace. And then let's remind you that the Father is no respecter of persons. And then these persons is connected with genetics. And when they see the Book of Life, they're reading a genetic doctrine of materialism. But when the Father looks into the Book of Life, he's seeing a spiritual representation of how the material life was lived. And that's what he's looking into. He's looking into what you've done spiritually right in a materially constrained life, and that's how you're judged. That's what the real opening of the Book of Life and those that are found worthy therein, not genetically. You know? Genetics are made to adapt and to evolve. So if the Father is the same yesterday, today, and forever through the person of Jesus Christ, then is not his love continuously the same in his agenda to continually evolve and uplift and perfect his children? And that there is no stopping point where you say, these people are no good, these people are undesirable. No, the Father sees them not as they are today, but as they are becoming into the tomorrows ahead. And if you continue to deceive and mislead and impregnate all of what you consider as undesirable people in this world as you being the leaders of this world, then that blood is on your hands. It's on your hands. It's on no other. And you ain't going to be able to wash this off. Definitely not with no muddy waters mingled with the murky waters of the sacred feminine. You know? And it's going to stain your hands with those tannins from that iron. And what's that going to do? What goes around comes around. You're going to be judging yourself, ain't you? With your own doctrine. You found yourself faulty, didn't you? Come on. That blackness. Okay, so I'm trying to see the numbers here. For the time, so the audio outage. So yeah, I'm trying to get you guys to see that they have seen a flip-flop in here because it's being quoted here as a Shigigion of David, whatever that means, which he sang unto the Lord concerning the words of the Cush Benjamite. So they're saying, well, how many words of this is from Cush, and then how many words of this is David that is added into it, this judgment that's going to be against Cush? Because you got to understand something. There's this stigma between the Benjamites and the armies of David, in that I can't exactly remember what it was enough to talk about at this moment, but if I remember correctly, the Benjamites ultimately did show up, and I know this is a fact. Ultimately, the Benjamites did show up and then fight on the side of the army of David. Ultimately, they did. And this is where you can see the intimation that comes in here in verse 4. And he says, O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there be iniquity in my hands, if I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me. And this is in relationship to David, the armies of David. If you know the further story behind Benjamite and David here. If I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me, yea, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. And this would be the relationship where the Benjamites did show up and fight in defense of David and help them win the war, or the battle, so to say. And I'm speaking from just memory here at this point, but I think that if you would follow that up, you would see what I'm reflecting upon here. Okay? So it's almost now where you've got these guys that are doing what? They're fighting with David. All right? They're fighting with this supposed, Solomon in the connection with the seal, in connection with what you know in the Temple of Solomon, everything they're trying to do with the Golden Age. These guys are working their labors for these guys, for this agenda of what they want to come through with this Novus Ordo Seclorum, right? But they're still going to cast them away. They still hate them without a cause. See that? Right. So in the ancient perspective, the Benjamites still fought with David and his armies and sought to help them against their mutual enemies. But then we see that David, at least those that are modeling and patterning themselves off of these ancient biblical patriarchs, then they're still trying to seek this vengeance without cause against the Benjamites, and it's because of a genetic doctrine, and it's because of the switcheroo, where we see that it's really the Aryan, at least these ancient, not the Caucasians in general. That's why it's so confusing. It's that these sons of God, they don't come from of the spiritual scriptures that cover the world. The most ancient information intimates these ideas about these beings and how they came about, but it's been lost to us because they need to switcheroo the identity of who these fallen one, and they're trying to shift it through this connection with Seth to this darkness, blackness, and chaos onto actual dark people that don't have anything to do with that, other than being caught in the trap of it by these people here who are blinded with some racial pride doctrines. Oh, man. So I've talked about this probably a little bit longer than I wanted to, but you should read that yourself. And if you've been following the other videos, it'll make a whole bunch of sense. Now look how this starts out in chapter 7. I'm just simply going to read this. It's going to be no accident that it stops here with this portion of it at line 6. And as I said, right, we had something significant that happened there. Okay? And listen to what he says, and listen to what I was trying to tell you. Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. What goes around comes around. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine eye, thou hypocrite? First cast out the beam out of thine own eye, then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote of thy brother's eye. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. Now what I showed you here, and what I've been showing you, leaves no room for mistranslation of what Jesus Christ is talking about, especially when you understand that Judah is Benjamin's keeper, and that in ancient times, when the tribes of Israel were suffering a famine in Canaan, we see that they went into the land of Egypt looking for what? Grain. And what ended up coming to play? Lots of slavery went down. Joseph rose to prominence in Egypt. Then they come back again. Then we see that Benjamin was needed as a slave offering for the grain. Who stepped in? Judah as Benjamin's keeper. Who is Jesus Christ? The conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. Chapter 7, Psalm 7, Benjamites. They're being encompassed. Everything that these people are even doing to me. I represent Judah. I represent Benjamin. I represent everything about what Jesus is trying to get you guys to see. And I need you to understand it before you make the mistake of your lives. Judge not, that ye be not judged. You hear this? This is going to come atop your head. This is going to come atop your head. As I said, we're getting to a stopping point in this connection where that railing accusation is brought against them. And the Father, I won't say that he's angry, but I will say he's very unhappy. Very unhappy with what these men are seeking to do to their brothers of different mothers. So when it talks about the beam and the mote, we've already equated this with the moon. We've already equated what the mote is, and the mote references what? A twig. Who was in this movie here called Twiggy Munson? Remember that? And then we see Woody Harrelson. Remember the hair, remember the wood, remember the twig. Now what is a mote? A mote is a dry twig, but it also relates to a dry stalk of wheat. And we see this connection with the wheat now being connected to the children of the corn that have something in their eye. Remember old Cornelius, right? From the very same movie, colored all yellow. And then we know who's got that beam in his eye, right? The massive beam who's judging another brother because he's got that mote in his eye, saying that he can't see through this connection with the Pandora's box and the moon. That way you're going to have to pay. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's the brother that is seeking to do in the other that's going to pay. And he's going to pay with his physical life, because that's what he's so freaking obsessed with. And he better be listening. So we know that the mote also represents what? Space. It represents the starry night, the starry expanse, the blackness between Earth and the moon, between the Earth and the stars. And this is where you get that island connection with the castaways, and then Gilligan's Island with red and blue. And then the boat is the SS Minnow. That's the SS, the Sons of Sam, that is stranded on some sort of island. And as you see now, that would be the moat, which is this engulfment between the two locations. One location now symbolizes even a castle that is surrounded in a moat. And then we know the connection with the two pasture lands. We know that some people don't ever make it to that refuge. So Jesus Christ is talking about what I'm talking about. Now, how can we guarantee that he is? Well, verse 6, give not that which is holy unto the dogs. Why would he be saying that on verse 6 right here, with what these people at verse 6 have misconstrued and have applied to their God, Osiris Orion, the resurrection God, the rising God, the rejuvenation God? Arise, O Lord, in thine anger, lift up thyself of the rage. Lift up thyself because of the rage. Okay, Canis Major. Orion, the hunter. Canis Major, one of the 88 modern constellations, Latin for greater dog. One of the dogs following Orion, the hunter. And then as we see here, if we could locate Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is here. This should be the shoulder of Orion, if I'm not mistaken. And then we see Sirius down here at the tip of the southern triangle. And then Sirius would be who? Jashin, dude that looks like a lady. Sirius is Isis. That's the sacred feminine. Isis is responsible for suckling Horus. And then we know that Horus is being represented by this individual right here, with a darkened right eye on his own face right here. He's symbolizing Horus, which is being suckled by the knowledge of the sacred feminine. So there you have it, my friends. We have the winter triangle, or the great southern triangle. Isis-Orion connection doubles the heat of the sun between July 3rd and August 11th. And then August 11th, 3014 or 3013, depending on who you listen to, starts the Mayan long count. And as I said, we have some very interesting connections there with Quetzalcoatl and then the Olmecs. Okay, my friends? So these would be the colors of those stars. And notice that it's red, white, and blue. 3 of the brightest of the 10 objects of the night sky. Latin for greater dog. Isis, Jashin, Jack, considered what? Connection with the Canis Major, also in connection with dogs, right? And I'm not saying that, okay? But I'm saying that if you're a part of some sort of murder doctrine against brothers from different mothers based upon dead letters, then Jesus is saying that about you. I'll be back.